To other news now, there are growing calls for restraint as the world reacts to Iran's aerial bombardment of Israel. It's Tehran's first ever direct attack on its neighbour. Israel says more than 300 missiles and drones were fired by Iran, Iraq, Syria and Yemen, but most were intercepted before entering Israeli airspace, taken down by the Iron Dome. The military ordered residents to take cover in the Golan Heights near the border with Syria and Lebanon, as well as towns in the country's south. And the overnight attack of Israel by Iran was significant not only for its scale, but Israel's high success rate in repelling more than 300 missiles and drones. Here's some analysis of the offensive and the defensive weapons used and the significance of the missiles that did make contact.
The Iranian attack on Israel was a pretty extensive affair. It was extensive in geographical terms as well as in the range of weapons, 331 missiles and drones that were used. Geographically, it was designed to stretch Israeli defences. So some of these missiles and drones came from Iran itself. Some of them came from Iraq. Some of them came from Syria. Others came from the southern tip of the Red Sea, from the Houthis, all the way to Israel. And some of them, of course, came across the border from Hezbollah in Lebanon. So this gave the Israelis 180 degrees to worry about in terms of their defences and, of course, Israel's allies as well. They were very successful. But the ones that really bothered them were the ballistic missiles. And the Iranians launched, we believe, 110 ballistic missiles, of which 103 were intercepted. These are some of those that are recorded by the Iranians as taking off. We don't quite know what they are, but they are probably Khorramshahr missiles or the Shahab-3 missiles, more likely, because they've got the long range. Most of them were intercepted outside Israeli territory. However, some missiles and drones obviously got quite a long way. We also have some footage of Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the most holy place for three great religions, and not far above Temple Mount, at quite low altitudes. You can see that some sort of air battle was taking place. The Iron Dome defense system that Israel runs was having to work pretty hard right above Temple Mount. So it was probably a closer thing than appears from the straight statistics. However, the Iranians did achieve success in the Nevatim air base. And the Nevatim air base is in the Negev desert in southern Israel. And Nevatim, although these 7 ballistic missiles that got through, they didn't do much damage. It's a very big air base. But symbolically, this is really important because it was from Nevatim that the F-35s of Israel took off 2 weeks ago to bomb the Iranian consulate as part of the embassy in Damascus. And that's what set off this current round of escalation. So the Iranians will feel that although they were 99% unsuccessful numerically in what they threw at Israel, the 7 missiles that got through hit the base from which they had been hit themselves. So in a sense, honours are even. The United States are saying to Israel, look, take the win and move on. Don't worry about it. Just leave it here. The rest of the world is saying to Israel, leave it. Take the victory from last night and move on. But Netanyahu is very unlikely to do that. Firstly, because this is the first time in history that Iran has successfully targeted Israeli territory itself, and that is an affront to Israel's security policy. And secondly, Netanyahu never believes in letting anybody else have the last military word. The Israeli War Cabinet seems to be briefing out the idea that they will respond within 48 hours, and I'm sure they will. So we won't have long to wait.
No, that's not long at all. OK, joining us live now, Ali Vaez. He's a senior advisor to the president at the International Crisis Group. Ali, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for joining us. So what do you make of, first of all, the attack from Iran and a potential response from Israel? Because according to Cabinet, they're locked as to whether they will respond or not.
It's great to be with you. Look, I think the Iranian attack was designed to be flashy, but not fatal. It was designed to be intercepted. Yeah. Precisely because the Iranians felt the need to restore a degree of deterrence after Israel targeted their consulate in Damascus. But they didn't want to trigger a broader escalation that would bring the U.S. into a direct confrontation with Iran. And therefore, it was a very difficult needle to thread, but it seems that they have managed to do so. Nevertheless, there is no guarantee that Israel would not respond and would not retaliate in kind by attacking Iran on its own soil, and this would give rise to another cycle of tit for tat that could easily spiral out of control.
So with that said, does Israel need to send a message back of some kind that this kind of attack, you know, the hundreds of missiles, is not appreciated too much?
Look, the reality is that Israel crossed the line by attacking a diplomatic facility, which is in contradiction to Vienna Convention that protects diplomatic facilities. And Iran crossed the line by targeting Israel for the first time directly from its own soil. So as your correspondent said, both sides are at the moment even. But if Israel continues, then the next round might not be as calibrated as the first round of Iranian attacks was. And also take into account, Iran did not bring the tip of the spear of its regional network of partners and proxies into this, which is Hezbollah. And if Hezbollah comes in with hundreds of thousands of precision-guided missiles targeting Israeli civilian centers, the cost would be catastrophic for all sides.
Yeah. Joe Biden says for Benjamin Netanyahu to take the win. Do you see it as a win, or did you hint in your previous answer that it was a draw?
Well, I think it was a draw because obviously Iran had telegraphed its plans of attack way in advance, and Israel was not alone in defending itself. The United States, the UK, even Jordan and Saudi Arabia were involved in shooting down a lot of these projectiles. And so overall, I think it is a draw. But the reality is that there's not a promising track record of Prime Minister Netanyahu listening to President Biden's advice. If he does so, it will be the first time that the so-called bear hug has actually delivered results.